All right. Hello again, everybody. Welcome back. This is the lecture for Unit 6 on Classical Europe. As you know from the readings, our focus is going to be on the two major civilizations that come out of Europe during this time. Number one being Greece, number two being Rome. Um, these are going to be the two civilizations that really kind of form the foundation for what we call Western culture. Greek rationalism, Roman law, Roman governance. I mean, all of these Greek and Roman mythology, all of these things influence Europe, and by influencing Europe, therefore influence the world for the next several thousand years, all the way up until right now in 2017. So plenty of supplemental viewing. There's always tons of information out there on Greece and Rome. Um, History here in the United States tends to be incredibly Eurocentric. So Greece and Rome have a huge place in modern history, especially again here in the U.S. The History Channel and things like that sort of have a love affair with Greece and Rome. So beyond just this recommended supplemental viewing, you should be able to find tons of information about both societies. All right, so let's begin in Hellas, aka Greece, which is the Greek name for the Greek peninsula. So classical Greece, aka Hellas, is formed on the western coast of the Aegean Sea near the Bosphorus Strait, which places it firmly on the gateway from Europe to Asia, which is going to play a very important role in Greece's future. Now, one of the number one things to remember about classical Greece is how big of a role environment plays in their history. Hellas is a long, very mountainous peninsula. And because of that mountainous environment, it leads to certain ways of life, certain very unique and distinct cultural traits among the Greek people. The two most significant being the fact that rather than a unified Greek state, what you get are a series of independent city states with their own traditions, their own ways of life, their own forms of government, their own culture, social structure, etc. You also get a very strong maritime tradition in Greece, meaning that these are people who grow up on and with the ocean their entire lives, which makes them expert fishermen, expert merchants, expert sailors, which is going to, again, play a really big role in their future going forward. So, the early part of Greek history, what some people call the Archaic period, begins somewhere around 800 BC, maybe a little bit earlier. The Greeks build their power and build their wealth around trade. They are very active in the Mediterranean. They trade with different Phoenician settlements, Mycenaean settlements on Crete. They trade with the Egyptians. Essentially, they become part of this massive trade network all around the Mediterranean Ocean. That success in trade leads to Greek settlers establishing colonies in Anatolia, in Italy, southern France, North Africa. So pretty quickly, the Greeks integrate themselves into this long established network in and throughout the Mediterranean. Um, and it's going to influence them, and they're going to influence it in a number of different ways. Now, in Greece itself, among these independent city states, a handful of them establish kind of a leading role, whether it be because of military prowess or access to trade, things like that. The big four here tend to be Athens, Sparta, Thebes, and Corinth. Those become the dominant powers. Those become the ones who major alliances on the Greek peninsula form around. And competition between these large city states and all of their neighbors and their allies leads to centuries of off and on warfare between each of them. The main combatants being Athens and Sparta, but the alliances shift regularly every few decades. One century, you may find Athens and Sparta locked in a death battle. In the very next century, they may be allied together against Thebes or some other city. Now, that constant cycle of warfare in Greece is going to be very influential on their response to external challenges as well. Around the early 4th century BCE, Greek expansion, especially in Anatolia, starts to bring them into direct contact with some of the other major civilizations around in the Mediterranean. And one of those, the superpower of the era, is Persia. And Persia, who controls most of Anatolia and Asia Minor, begins to exert pressure on these Greek colonies to submit and become part of the Persian Empire. Naturally, the Greeks, with their strong sense of independence, and their sense of, willing to fight for that independence, essentially tell the Persians to screw off. And that's going to lead to a showdown between Greece and Persia coming up here very shortly. So this map gives you an idea of the major players in Greece. As you can see, Athens, Sparta, Corinth, Thebes. These are kind of, like I said, the big four out of the group. They're the ones who pretty much drive the political landscape in Greece. Now, even with a strong tradition of independence between the Greek city states and very distinct cultural traits between them, there were a number of unifying forces in Greek society. Even though the city states varied culturally, most of them had a very similar social structure. Slave labor was prominent in all of them. All of these Greek city states are very heavily patriarchal, some more than others, but in all of them, in some way, patriarchy is a key factor, especially in political life. Women are essentially excluded from all avenues of power. Um, in Greece, they had a bit more opportunity to enter, religious and spiritual positions, but politically, I mean, they were essentially extricated, just like they were in most of the other civilizations that we've talked about in this period. As certain cities grow and become more powerful, the social stratification of Hellas becomes more concrete and it becomes more pronounced. The city states in the most power tend to set the tone. And, city states like Athens and Sparta, who both have a pretty pronounced patriarchy, uh, basically, expanded their cultural influence over their surrounding neighbors, and their system of government, their, cultural traditions became the way of life. Um, Culturally, the Greeks have a very rich spiritual life. We are here in the West, very familiar with the pantheon of Greek gods, from Zeus to, Poseidon to, the legends and the mythology, Hercules and Jason and the Argonauts and Medusa and on and on and on, right? And that pantheon and that mythology has inspired authors not only during Greek times, but all the way well into modern times. Um, the Greek alphabet has become a staple of college life through fraternity and sorority life, as well as classical studies. The Greek alphabet is actually an adoption from the Phoenicians, which the Greeks picked up through centuries of trade. And the adoption of that Phoenician alphabet opens the door to this massive outpouring of Greek culture. And it allows for some of the earliest and the most important texts in Western literature, specifically the texts of Homer, the Iliad, and the Odyssey, which are basically agreed upon as the earliest Western, you know, real literature, novels per se. But you also get very famous playwrights like Sophocles and Euripides. Um, One of the more unifying parts of Greek culture is the idea of citizenship. Each of the cities in Greece experiments with their own independent form of government. The Athenians are celebrated and lauded world over for essentially the invention of democracy, although that's somewhat debatable. But the Greeks developed many other forms of um, government which last into modern times. The idea of an oligarchy, the idea of a limited monarchy in which the ruler must share power either with the citizenship or must have it limited by law. Um, and this concept of citizenship and the level of citizen participation in government is very unique to the Greeks. It's part of the reason why they are highly celebrated because this runs counter to pretty much all of the political thought of this classical era. I mean, if you think in terms of Confucianism, if you think in terms of other belief systems that we've talked about, the idea that all citizens, or at least all land owning citizens, all non slaves, would have some level of participation in the government is antithetical to basically every political structure that we've talked about up to this point. Empire and monarchy are far and away the example of the day. And the idea of, forget democracy, just the fact of limiting the power of a monarch alone is pretty revolutionary for the time.